Well, welcome to the show, everybody. I am so glad that you could join us. Today, we have an incredible guest. Her name is Danielle Miura, and she is joining us from California. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. We've chatted a couple times and it's been really neat to get to know you. And now I get to be on your podcast. What an honor.
I'm so excited to have you. This is the first podcast. You're my first guest. So, we're going to kick this off. Um, and what I would love to start with is your story. So, tell me a little bit about your caregiving experience.
Yeah, as I make the joke, I feel like I skewed the research studies because my story is not as common as others. I'm not a 49 and a half year old woman, white woman. Well, I guess I'm white, but I'm not 49 and a half. So
Yeah.
my caregiving story started at 25. I have a young daughter, and my grandmother fell on tile floor and broke her hip. And so that was my first day as a sandwich generation caregiver.
That that is so difficult and it resonates with me a lot because I joined the caregiving community in my early 30s. So I was not the stereotypical caregiver either. And I had young kids at home. And I see her beautiful artwork behind you.
Yeah, we're trying to have some fun here. Life's too short.
Yes, it is. So when you were going through all of this caregiving, and so you were a sandwich generation caregiver,
Yeah.
that you had your daughter and you had your grandmother. Um, what was that like for you? You know, what did you go through? How did you cope with it? How did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think as many caregivers do, they more stumble upon caregiving rather than like it's their life mission to be a caregiver. I didn't grow up thinking I'm gonna be a family caregiver. It was I'm gonna be a police officer or I'm going to be a physical therapist. Um, at that time, financial professionals weren't as well known to me, so that wasn't a profession I wished for as a kid. But yeah, definitely family caregiver isn't one of them. Wasn't one of them on the list. When I
Yeah.
started caregiving, I didn't associate myself with a family caregiver. I associated with being a family member and the responsibilities of caring for someone, the responsibilities of playing the family role that I thought was required of me. It wasn't until I started caregiving for two people and burning out that I realized this is much more than what a normal person in a family group does. This is
Right.
taking much more of my time than I initially thought. Um, I was emotionally burnt out. Um, I I was exhausted. I was irritated. I was spending much more time with my aging loved ones than I was with my child.
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of hit me like, maybe I am a family caregiver. And that's how it started, the rabbit hole journey started um, into becoming specialized in family caregiving as a financial professional.
Right. So talking about professions and what you thought you would do when you grew up and what you're doing now during the caregiving experience, how did that affect your career? Did it affect your career or your income or anything in any way?
I had to cut back a lot of my hours and limit the amount of clients that I was working with, which is unfortunate, but that's very common for family caregivers. A lot of caregivers miss promotions, have to limit the amount of hours that they're working. They may
Yeah.
even consider quitting their job or retiring early to
Mhm.
caregive. And so um, I wouldn't say because I was in a unique situation where I could be flexible with my hours.
Mhm.
It worked to my advantage, unlike others. Um, but
Yes.
it was still hard for me. I felt like I was giving up my passion and part of my life by caregiving.
Right. And when you do that, it can be difficult to keep your sense of humor or, find what brings you joy. So is there a way that you did that, or is there something that you can look back on that time and think about that this was really funny, or we would laugh about this, or I did this and it brought me joy and happiness? Because it can be hard to find those moments.
Yeah, I would consider myself the most humorous person, as I'm looking at myself. I would consider myself quirky and maybe on the side of weird, but I wouldn't consider myself humorous.
Mhm.
What I usually did to kind of cut the tension or give myself relief is to have like mini dance and singing. I would close the door and I
Yeah.
would play Spotify as loud as possible and
Oh,
have
that's
like
great.
mini dancing and singing shows, like mini shows for myself.
Yeah.
It felt good. Back in the day, people used to call me like the human iPod when iPods like used to exist. My
Right.
husband says my hidden useless talent is pretty much memorizing every lyric that exists. So
That's awesome because I'm so terrible at lyrics.
yeah, that's what I really did as like my outlet is like being
Yeah.
in the car, having the sunroof open, blaring music, probably not good for my hearing, but um it was my outlet. It's what makes me feel good.
Yeah. Did you have a go-to song or a certain genre or artist that you're like, if I'm in a bad mood or I need to be lifted, like there was one thing that, just did it for you?
I'm pretty much into every genre. I don't think country is usually the one that like uplifts me, but I do
Mhm.
enjoy country.
Yeah.
Um, I would say mostly like hip hop slash rap,
Mhm.
pop, um, like some Japanese pop or like Korean pop.
Yeah.
Um, Mostly those genres.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, and
some like classic rock mixed in.
yeah,
Alternative rock is too slow. I need something to get me
you need
upbeat.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you just said something that's really important. You said, I like country, but I wouldn't say that I listen to it, to uplift me. Music always meets us where we are. And so you kind of find what mood you're in, and then you select music that sort of reflects your mood. And I think it's really important to do that as well, because caregiving can be so lonely and isolating.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the time or the opportunity to talk to somebody else who gets it, being able to pop on an artist or an album or a playlist or whatever that suits how you're feeling can make you feel like you have somebody with you on that ride anyway.
Yeah, and it's also control. Like you can, a lot of things in caregiving you can't control, but you can
Yeah,
control what music you play. Like now Spotify's using AI to like give you some like hits you didn't think of. So it's like you
right.
can control what makes you feel good.
Yeah. And that is super important that you touched on, because there generally in life, there's very few things that we can control, but it seems like it's really put under a microscope when you're caregiving, because you're reacting to everything. And there's so much that's happening to you and around you and to your loved one that it really is more important, I think, to caregivers in particular to have those things in life that they can control. Um,
Mhm.
so for everybody who's listening, music is certainly a good one. It's probably also why people like to binge watch things or choose shows on streaming. So something to think about. What are the little things that you can control and make you be able to relax in that space and in that knowledge that, okay, all this noise is happening around me right now, but I can do this right here.
Mhm.
So that's a really, really great insight. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. we have to find joy and happiness in some of the little things that we do.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. So food brings people joy, brings people happiness. It can also be the bane of a caregiver's existence because of dietary restrictions, food allergies, medication requirements and restrictions of what you're allowed to have. Um, and, just generally the energy of having to think about what you're going to make and what you're going to serve. Do you have a go-to food from when you were caregiving that was an easy food or an easy meal or something that you could share with the listeners so that they could maybe put that on their list for the week?
Yeah, I will disclaim that I'm not a nutritionist.
That's okay.
So, I'm not necessarily giving advice based off of good nutrition, but my husband's the cook in the family, so as like fall and winter is coming through,
Yeah.
um, he would make curries during the winter
Ooh,
and like Japanese curries. So I really enjoy that as we're thinking about like the fall and the winter time.
yeah.
But when my husband wasn't cooking, I would focus on like Costco pre-made meals or Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Um, there's a Trader Joe's, there's like a chicken and rice polenta dish that I like that's easy to microwave.
Mhm.
Costco has a really good risotto, which might be good for loved ones that have trouble like chewing
Doing
foods,
yeah,
yeah,
right.
that need soft foods. And so when my grandmother passed away, she had a like refrigerator full of the like delicious Costco pre-made meals that I bought her. And so then I had to go through it all
Yeah,
when she passed away, and I was like, yeah, I just bought you all that like a week ago, and now I have to eat it all myself because I don't want it to go to waste. I ended up
right.
giving some of it to the neighbors, but yeah,
Yeah.
we really tried our best, especially towards the end, to find good quality foods that were soft, that were pre-made
Yes.
meals, so it was easy for the care workers to just heat them up, which can
Mhm.
sometimes be really challenging. But I found that lemongrass risotto at Costco to be the easiest fix for that.
That's a really good suggestion, and for people who don't have Costco near them, I can't vouch for BJ's and Sam's because I also have a Costco near me. But we will get things like they at least at ours, it may be regional. Here on the East Coast, they do stuffed peppers, which is rice and
Mhm.
ground beef, and those are also soft and easy. Pre-made, you just throw them in the oven. So those are really good suggestions. So for anybody who has any of those stores near them, check that out. And a lot of grocery stores too will do pre-made
Mhm.
meals. So on a quick night, if you need some time and you just need that brain space back, um, there is no shame in that game.
No, definitely
So,
not. And then I would also say like baby tomatoes or like grapes. The
mhm,
problem with me is I got lazy and I like didn't want to wash them, or I like forgot to wash them. I'm that person, like if it's not in front of the refrigerator when you open the refrigerator, it gets lost. It's
yep.
like the refrigerator is a tunnel. And
Yes.
so like pre-washing like baby tomatoes or grapes or like having like a banana on hand while you're on the go can just be an easy, like healthy snack.
Yes. That's that's key, having healthy grab and go food. So even if you're not literally getting in the car and going to an appointment or something, I mean, most folks who are caregivers know it's not that often that you get to just sit down and have a meal during the day. And even dinner, you know, depending on the care that you're giving and your particular situation, that can also be hit or miss. So healthy snacks, Costco, BJ's, Sam's, whatever you have near you, um, making things as easy and convenient for yourself as possible There's nothing wrong with that. And I keep saying nothing wrong with that because I think a lot of people have guilt around it,
Mhm.
you
It
know?
has to be a pre-made meal that you cooked. It can't be like, I
Right.
think we set a really high bar for ourselves, and which in a way I appreciate, because that's why we're caregivers. We feel compelled to care for somebody else. We honor that, and that's really special and unique. That doesn't come by many people. And so I appreciate how much work and dedication people take, but you got to give yourself some grace too, that
Yeah.
not everything's going to, life is going to be crazy and you're not going to always be able to make a full cooked meal.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So, continuing this conversation about challenges that caregivers face, and you are a financial planner, um, have you faced, or what financial challenges have you faced since becoming a caregiver?
Yeah, as I said, I had to dip into savings. I couldn't take on as many clients, and so my income was lowered, and so I had to dip into savings and um, to provide unpaid caregiving. My grandmother would reimburse me for the things I bought for her, but everything else was paid through me. So cart maintenance, gas. I didn't pay for any health or long-term care expenses, but the caregiving portion was on me.
Right.
So in order to live and in order to meet basic necessities, I dipped into savings as well as used government resources to subsidize my income.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I think when you're thinking about caregiving and you're outside of the caregiving bubble, like it's happening to someone else, or you're talking to a colleague who's going through it, you think, oh, well, insurance covers the care and whatever. And that may be the case if the person has Medicare or really good policy of some sort. But like you just said, that doesn't cover all of the other day to day expenses and the compounding expenses of the care that isn't covered. So
Mhm.
people can quickly fall into some challenges. So I'm curious, what are some of those most common challenges that caregivers face?
Yeah, so as I said, missed promotions, dipping into savings, getting into debt, not planning for yourself, not caring for yourself, so not planning for retirement, not having your own long-term care fund. You may have expenses that are overlooked, like paying for therapy or having to pay deductibles for seeing a doctor more often because your health declines while caregiving. You may have care expenses that you didn't realize. Like I didn't realize how much car maintenance and gas would add up, especially when it was $5 per gallon. I was like, ouch, this is really starting to add up.
Yeah,
And then just like extra food costs. Like I noticed that I was going more out to eat. Even getting pre-made meals can be more expensive than making them at home.
right.
And so I think people don't realize how much is adds up once, they haven't created a budget or made an organized system to really understand how much there is a difference between being a non-caregiver versus being a caregiver.
Yeah. So are there financial steps that people can take that would um, help them when they first take on a caregiving role?
Yeah, so to simply answer your question, I usually say get your finances in order, get your loved ones' finances in order, and that's usually like the simple answer to that question. The more complicated answer to that question would be what I do with clients is I do what's called mental dress rehearsals. So I'm not like dressing myself up, but what what I do is we go through different scenarios together. And so we'll say, you started unpaid caregiving and you realize that gas is just adding up because it's $5 a gallon. And you're taking your loved one to doctor's appointments every other day, let's say. How would you handle that situation? So we go through, what are the steps that they're just brainstorming ideas and going through the steps to help them through that situation, that if then statement.
Hmm.
Here's another example. If you were taking a lot of time off of work, you realize caregiving has consumed most of your time, you can't work full time. What do you do then? Do you quit your job? Do you go into early retirement? Do you take FMLA? What are some options for you? So kind of
Right.
running through those scenarios are very helpful, so you can not only mentally prepare, but you can financially prepare for those situations. I think the hardest thing that I've seen a lot of people have is talking with their loved ones about their finances.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
call it the talk, or the money talk.
Right.
It can be a very like uncomfortable situation for many people. Like I would say probably more than 70% of people, I don't have this like statistically proven, haven't had that conversation with their parents about their finances. And so when
Mm.
you step into that caregiving role, how do you know where to pull money out to pay for care expenses if you don't know where their accounts are located, or if there's power of attorney set up? So there's a
Mhm.
lot of questions that need to be asked ahead of time so you can physically and mentally prepare for those situations. You don't want to be blinded when it happens.
Right. So those are some pretty practical things that people can do. So um, just to sort of recap, FMLA, just in a lot of conversations that I've had, I think people typically assign FMLA in their mind to expanding your family, whether you're having a baby or
Mhm,
you're adopting a child. But it does also apply to caregiving. So
mhm.
if you are taking care of a spouse or a parent or a grandparent, whomever, do talk to your place of work about taking FMLA. Um, Sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not, but it does guarantee for a period of time that they will hold your job for you. So reach out to your HR representative.
Yeah, as a note of advocacy, I would say that unfortunately not all states have paid family leave.
Mhm.
A lot of states are expanding the definition of what is considered under family leave. And so I would, if you're a family caregiver who's run into this or you feel passionate about it, I would really suggest you advocate for these policies and bills that come through, because it can be a lifeline for many people.
Right. Agreed. And this is a good time to talk briefly, quickly about the 53 million unpaid caregivers in the United States. So, generally speaking, if you're in a room, you know, you're going to be able to set eyes on somebody who is either a caregiver or is being cared for. And if you don't fall into that bucket, according to Rosalind Carter, and she's not wrong, you will be a caregiver or you will need care. So this really is something that affects everyone. And those policies are extremely important because if they don't apply to you yet, they will. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a very good point. You had said something else when you were talking about some of those tips. Oh, power of attorney.
Mhm.
So from a financial perspective, can you talk about what power of attorney is and what it would grant people the access to do? Because I think a lot of folks aren't entirely sure what that entails from a financial perspective.
Yeah, a lot of people just think it's just a fancy paper. When in some ways it is a fancy paper, but it holds a lot of power that many people don't realize. And coming into that role of needing to help make someone's we'll just talk about financial decisions. Um, that's a big responsibility. It's not as simple as I'm just gonna help them withdraw money from their account. When you go to withdraw money from the account, you have to make sure that the power of attorney form is on file. And that may take weeks for a bank to approve or for an investment company to approve. It's not just like, here's my document, now let's just withdraw money. It doesn't usually work as, I would love that to happen for everybody, but usually that doesn't occur that way. And so what I always tell people is making sure you're building relationships with your bank teller, with your power of attorney. Have them sit on that meeting together, making sure that your power of attorney forms are already set into place at your financial institutions. And also realizing if you know you're a power of attorney, spend an hour or two, pay an attorney to go through what the responsibilities consist of being a power of attorney, because it holds a lot more legal responsibility than many people think.
Yeah.
And that can be scary for many people, including me, who will be a power of attorney sooner or later. Side note, which might help in our conversation, I got a call from my mom, who's a power of attorney for someone, and she called me and she goes, "Hey, by the way, you're now required to make medical decisions for this person, because you're their power of attorney for making medical decisions." And I was like, what? Like, when did this start? Like, I had no clue that I was supposed to be making medical decisions for this person. There was no heads up at all. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden one day, pretty much the doctor told my mom that like I was supposed to be making medical decisions. Um,
Wow.
I was like, at my age at 29, like, I don't want to be making those type of decisions for anyone.
Yeah.
Um, I guess my loved one filled out the form to have me make medical decisions for her. I don't even know if she read the document before signing it, but
Yeah.
so
Well, and that's an incredibly important thing to share, because I think when you're in the doctor's office and you get those forms, you don't think about it until you get the form and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I going to list? Well, whoever you choose to list, as soon as you're done filling out that form, you should send them a text message or put a little reminder to yourself to communicate to them that you've listed them. Because then you need to have a conversation about your medical history and
yeah,
what medications you're taking and all of that so that they can make good, solid, well-informed decisions on your behalf, because it's already an overwhelming responsibility, and then to not be prepared for it is worse.
yeah,
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 I feel for you.
yeah. Yeah, I was pretty surprised because I had to make the decision whether they go on hospice or not, which I think is a pretty major decision. So at
Yes.
least it wasn't like a life impeding decision, but
Yeah.
um, it's not something you like when something just falls in your lap like that. You're like,
Right.
this isn't not a decision I want to make right now, but
Right.
I have to make it.
Yeah. And it's why it's so important to have these conversations overall. And in particular, when there's nothing wrong, when everyone's healthy and of sound mind and body, so that you can clearly articulate to the people who love and care for you what your wishes are.
Mhm.
So, I'm sure could have a whole other podcast about that.
Yeah.
Maybe
Next
we
time.
will.
But like back to our financial conversation and talking about finances, like these are the hard decisions family caregivers have to make.
Right.
It's not easy. And I call myself sometimes like a attorney on file. Um, like many of my
Yeah.
clients, I'm a person they can call when things like this happen, when they, oopsie, now I'm the power of attorney that I never realized.
Mhm.
Um, Now I'm deciding whether they got a huge, let's say they got a huge medical bill, and like how do I go through it and make sure there's not any misfiling or um, miss expenses that are on here. How can I build the insurance to make sure that they're not paying this much money? It can be as
Right.
simple as that. Um, and just having someone there for you to help you through those moments is
Mhm.
crucial, because it's like what do they call it? Like decision fatigue. It's like you're
Yes.
making so many decisions, it's so overwhelming
Mhm.
that it's just you need someone and want someone to help you through that.
Yeah.
I
And oh, decision fatigue is so real. I am past my sandwich caregiving journey for now, knock wood. Um, but even still, the decision fatigue is very real. My husband the other night was like, "Hey, let's watch a movie. What do you want to watch?" I was like, "I'll watch anything you want to put on, but I am not deciding what we watch."
and
My
I'm not
brain
going to
is
be
done for the
responsible
day.
if any of these are bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's very real. Um, so are there any other tips? We talked about tips and then we kind of did a little tangent and we came back around. Is there anything else from a tips perspective that you want to make sure that people are aware of?
Yeah, we talk about, especially in the caregiving industry, I feel like that there's so much talk about self-care
Mm,
and and like you meditate or go to therapy or go to a support group, which are all great things, don't get me wrong.
mhm.
Um, but we don't talk enough about financial health
Yeah.
and wellness and what that means. It almost seems like we are just supposed to just throw our money away and accept the fact that we have to dip into our savings, that we have to sacrifice our money well-being for our future. And that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah. That is very true. And the financial well-being aspect feeds in to your overall well-being and your level of stress and your level of worry. Because I would say for the majority of people, your biggest concern is your loved one's health and taking care of them. And right underneath that, you are worried about money.
Mhm.
And if people can talk to a financial planner such as yourself to get a plan in place and see what kind of money they have and what they can do with it to make it work for them, it will and it does help to alleviate some of that stress and anxiety. Doesn't take it away, nothing will in this situation, but I think as a caregiving community, one of the things that we can do for one another is look for the balm that we can place on the wounds incurred along the way. And so someone like you who is a financial planner who specializes in caregiving and families who are dealing with caregiving, um, how can you help them to make informed decisions and be financial balm?
Financial bubble. I may use that in the future. I like that. Um, there's so many things. I would focus on three aspects. One is protecting your financial health. So how can we set those boundaries? How can we plan for the future so that even though you might be taking some sacrifices now, we have you covered after caregiving. Dreaming. dreaming what life might be like when caregiving is over. Um, I don't, I feel like maybe this is something that I did wrong is that I really forgot I was so tunnel vision within caregiving. It's like my box of possibilities was enclosed.
Yeah.
And so I don't only focus on the financial aspects, but dreaming and discovering who you are and what's important to you, because caregiving doesn't have to be forever.
Mhm.
And after caregiving is over and you've encircled your life around your loved one, what about yourself do you love? What do you enjoy doing? And many people
Yeah.
don't think that's associated with money, but everything that you do that you like about yourself and your life has to do with money.
Yes.
So that's why we call it personal finance.
Hmm.
And then the third thing is, as we talked about, is making decisions, having someone be your right hand person that can help you make decisions and help you through that process.
As people are thinking about this, and um, if they weren't thinking about it before, they sure are now.
I hope
Uh,
so.
they can reach out to you. And what would be the best place for them to contact you for a conversation? And we can share it in social posts as well.
Yeah, so usually the best way to contact me is through social media or my email. I'll give you my email so you can list it below, which you
Perfect.
already have. And then I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. I provide my life story of being a caregiver as well as financial tips interwoven so that people understand I'm not just a person who just gives you financial tips. I'm a person who understands what you've gone through, that has a story to tell. And I feel like that also mixes in with the way we advocate for caregivers. I
Yes.
don't just sit behind a desk all day and give people financial advice, money advice, and then I close the door and then the day is done. Most of my work, if not half of my work, maybe, would be advocating for caregivers on a state and national stands, working with other nonprofits so that we can create a better life for caregivers. Because this doesn't have to be, I hope that when my child becomes a caregiver, which she most likely will,
Yeah.
um, I hope that there's a better world out there for her, that there's a better community and resources set up for her. So I don't feel like my job ends just being behind a desk with my office door closed and I get
Mhm.
to enjoy the rest of my life because I still have things that need to be done and accomplished.
Right. Yeah. Well, and oh, you said it so well. And it really resonated with me because I'm doing this certainly to honor my mom and honor her memory, but I'm doing this so that my kids don't have the lack of resources that we had. And I was having this conversation with Lance from All Home Care Matters recently about how I think our generation's biggest contribution or most significant contribution is the fact that we are all seeing this caregiving crisis for what it is. And we are using our knowledge and experience and our individual talents to solve these problems.
Mhm,
And we are not going to continue to allow it to be this silent epidemic
mhm.
because people are speaking up. We're creating podcasts. And I would love for the audience and the folks who are listening and watching to know that there are a lot of people on your side and we've been through it and we are doing what we can to make it better and make this community seen and heard and understood in a way that it hasn't been before. So thank you, Danielle, for your time
I
and
just
your
got chills.
expertise.
Hidden
Um,
heroes don't have to be hidden anymore.
that's exactly right. Hidden heroes do not have to be hidden anymore. And we are going to continue this path and we are going to make it better for those who follow. I'm certainly glad that heroes don't have to be hidden anymore. And it is people like you stepping up and stepping in who are going to continue to give other people the strength to do that. And so, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your knowledge. And I wish you the best of luck with all of the things that you have ahead.
Thank you.